Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Eden. Eden is one of those characters that starts out with random amount of health, random amount of stats, and just random items, so you never know what you're going to get whenever you play as him. Because this is the Daily Run, obviously everyone who's playing the Daily Run will start out with the same configuration. And we started out with the Razor item, which is an active item that whenever we use it, we deal 1 full heart of damage to ourselves, and we increase our damage for the room, I think. But I'm not really sure because I've never used this item, and especially in a daily run, I'm not really sure if this item actually deals damage to you or inflicts damage penalty. So if you don't know, there are items like the IV bag or maybe the blood bank, or maybe if you enter a curse room, which deal damage to you, which means they will take away your health, but they won't count towards your damage penalty, and damage penalty is just how much damage you've taken on a run, and that's usually mostly meant for how many times the enemy hit you. But some items, I'm not really sure which, but I'm pretty sure there are some items which do deal damage to you and they inflict damage penalty on you. So that means whenever you use them, your score will be lower. And I'm not sure if Blood Rights here is one of those items. So for that reason, I'm not really willing to use it. And at the same time, we don't really have any red health on the floor, which I can kind of replenish my life with. So if I used it and then went back to heal myself, I couldn't do that because obviously there's no health. And the second item we start out with is the Halo of Flies, which gives you 2 orbital flies. And these orbital flies fly around you and they act as a protective barrier towards enemy tears. So when an enemy shoots you with a regular tear shot, they will actually block it. So that's very useful. It doesn't protect against brimstone shots or maybe some beam shots or whatever. But against most enemies, especially Harsh, it's very useful because it kind of reduces your percentage or chance to get hit, because even if you make a bad dodge, there's always a chance that one of those orbitals will save you. One little known fact about the flies in particular is that they actually do deal some contact damage. So everybody knows that the cube of meat deals a bunch of damage whenever you go near an enemy, but the hitbox of the flies are so small that it's very unusable against most enemies that move around. So they're really useful against static enemies which don't have contact damage, which means polyps which spawn spiders or maybe any polyp which shoots bullets, they don't actually have any contact damage, which means you can touch them without being afraid of getting hurt. And you can actually abuse that, and I did that in the previous room. You can just go near them and the flies will actually deal some damage to them, so you don't really have to worry about them. Another enemy which doesn't deal any contact damage and you can abuse this on is maybe just the black fly, but other than that, there's not really a lot of enemies which you can kind of get near to without worrying of getting hurt. But they do have its uses, so I think it's important to know, especially early on whenever you're facing those polyps which spawn a bunch of spiders and maybe you have to deal with a bunch of enemies in the room. It's kind of hard to deal with that, and knowing that you can kind of get in close and personal and abuse this and still focus your tears on something else is a very useful thing to know. So with that said, we also got our third orbital, which is the cube of meat, and now our orbital suite is complete, which means we have 3 orbitals going around us. And there's at this point, whenever an enemy shoots us, there's actually a very low chance that the tear will actually hit us, just because we have so much defensive options here. There's a way to maybe make our suit better, and that's via the Guardian Angel, which makes your orbitals kind of spin around faster, but at this point we really don't have to worry about anything. We're on the 2nd floor, we have some defensive orbitals, and we also have the cube of meat, which is a very offensive orbital. And I always say the cube of meat is one of those items that is just such a solid item that you really want to have on every run, because it does allow and open up so many opportunities. Thankfully, because this floor was kinda easy, even though our damage and our stats in general weren't as high, we did get the Halo and the Death's Touch, which will make things a bit easier. Having penetrative shots, especially in a run that goes to Harsh, is so very useful, just because Harsh spawns so many enemies that are so hard to deal with if you can damage multiple copies of them at once. Just because you get overwhelmed so fast, especially if you have maybe a low tier stat or maybe a low damage stat. And everybody knows that certain stats are very hard to come by, and the fact that we got 2 of those, the Halo and the Death's Touch, on the 2nd floor is looking very promising for this run, and we're probably set for the next few floors. So before I go into it, there's still a topic of how we want to kind of tackle this run. So maybe do we want to use Blood Rights to get the maximum amount of damage? So maybe do we want to roll red hearts, or maybe will we focus on blue hearts immediately? And that was a decision that I was kind of debating on this floor, because we got the magic scab and we also had 1 eternal heart that we could have picked up, which means we would be at 3 hearts, and at that point, we are going mainly for the IV back plays, something like that. But what convinced me is the fact that we got Dark Bomb in the Devil deal, and the Dark Bomb actually allows us to roll only on Spirit Hearts because he's a renewable resource, I guess. I still keep myself at 1 red heart at least, because not only did we get the luck up from the Magic Scab, we also get the ability to play the Blood Banks, at least for the next 3 floors whenever they're dealing only half a heart of damage to us. So we can kind of abuse that, not abuse it, but use that to our advantage to actually get some red health back. Because we don't have any items that require us to be on 0 red health, I think it's always good to have at least 1 red health, because that also gives you access to the boss trap rooms, and the boss trap rooms actually do net you quite a bit of points if you have time to do them. Thankfully, because we also get Epiphora and we got just a bunch of nice damage stats up, we are able to deal with most enemies and most rooms in a very timely manner, and we were able to explore most of the floors up until this point. I think we even managed to find every secret room except on the first floor. So that's looking very swimmingly for us. I'm always surprised whenever I have a run, and I feel like it's doing so well, but when I actually get maybe to boss rush, I see that my points aren't as high as I thought they were gonna be. And that's so odd, because I remember, so just to give you an example, whenever you finish boss rush, and if you're at like 20,000 points, that's an indication that you have a very good run. Usually I think you end up at like 15,000 points before you go to boss rush. That's a good indication that it's going well. But I think on average in total, you would end up at around 18,000 points whenever you finish boss rush, which means you would net about 20,000 to 21,000 points or 22,000 points on the high side whenever you enter the womb or the utero one. So for that reason, I think that it's just good to have these numbers in your head, so you kind of know how well the run is going. And I was, like I said, really surprised in this run, because I felt like I explored every room, at least at the start, and I visited every secret room as well. And we even got we didn't have a lot of consumables, obviously, but I still felt like we had enough. And the fact that I kind of finished, I think I had only 20,000 points, and also the fact that I just didn't get hit much. I think I only got hit 2 or 3 times in total, up until boss rush. Then of course boss rush kind of wrecked me, because it was the Curse of Darkness, and as you know, the Curse of Darkness is not my friend. I hate playing the Curse of Darkness because you can't see things. What's even more surprising, because what happened on the first floor, I picked up Fear Shot, Mom's Perfume, which is an item I never pick up. I think fear makes enemies too unpredictable and just too tedious to kill, because they move in random directions, they move away from you, kind of have to chase them down, you put yourself in uncomfortable positions. But just for the sake of it, I wanted maybe to get a different impression of the item, because while I've played this game for a long time, when I decided I don't want to pick up Mom's Perfume anymore because it's not a fun item, at least not in dailies, that's when I said, that's when I stopped picking it up. And maybe I thought, maybe like after 200 hours in the game, maybe my opinion changes. So I decided to pick it up again. And what it does is, besides giving you fear shots, it also reduces your tear delay, which means that on average, whenever you pick up an item that reduces your tear delay, you will shoot faster. And especially combined with the fact that we had a lot of tear speed ups, so that we shoot faster, I think that's a good combination, that we can get some crazy things going here. But yeah, it didn't turn out well, especially in boss rush, because it was the Curse of Darkness, and whenever you fear an enemy, they turn into this dark violet color, and it becomes very hard to see in this dark, in the curse, because besides it being pitch black, they also have this dark tint to them, and they're just hard to see. So what happened is that I didn't see Death, which is a very big boss, and he was dark, he was black already because of his champion color. And then I managed to fear him as well, just because I have 6 shots at this point, and one of them is bound to fear him. And he turned into even darker, so I wasn't able to see him, especially his sights. I managed to get away from that fight, but just the fact that I make enemies naturally darker and that makes them harder to see is kind of a weird anti-synergy I never thought about. So not only is Fear Shot bad, because it makes enemies unpredictable and harder to hit and takes more time, but it's also bad because it makes it impossible to see in the Curse of Darkness. And I think that's a good testament as to why I don't think I'll take this item, unless maybe I have Black Candle or maybe other combination of my items which work well. But I think the tear up is just not worth it. Unlike the Dark Matter, which is an item you usually find in the Devil deals, which gives you just a solid 1 damage up, and which is sometimes very useful, especially if you didn't get a lot of damage ups. That can really save your run. But I think the teardown is just, the strong gets stronger, basically. So whenever you have a strong run, I would recommend picking it up when it can screw you over, but when you're not sure, or maybe when you have a weak run, then just don't go with it. So another fun item that we picked up is the triple shot, which is not that fun in itself, but we also got the whiz, or the dance cap item, which makes our shots kind of double, but you can see that we shoot them at an angle, and the fact we had triple shot before means we shoot 3 sights out of every eye, so to say, at a 45 degrees angle. And you might be wondering, why the hell would you pick this up? This is one of the worst items in the game, especially since the latest DLC. How can you even imagine working? And usually you're right, you wouldn't pick this up, just because it makes shooting so much more uncomfortable. You're just not used to the fact that you kind of have to shoot at a 45-degree angles. It makes dodging certain enemies much harder, and especially when you have a pattern memorized already as to how to fight certain enemies, it really messes with you, and you can get hit a lot more times than is maybe necessary. But I decided to pick it up, first of all, because I think I'm at the point in the game where I need to explore a little bit, because I feel like I'm limiting myself by not picking up certain items. And also at the same time, I know the Wiz, while it is a bad item, we had a very nice combo going that makes Wiz actually quite usable in my opinion. The fact that we have triple shot, and the fact we also have a lot of teardowns, and the fact that this gives us double shots basically, means that we can not only hit Hush by the twice amount of damage we would usually do to him just because he's such a wide target. It also means that even on regular floors, on enemies that are smaller, we're bound to hit something, and the fact that we shoot at an angle actually makes us, I think, a bit safer to fight against certain enemies, just because a lot of enemies in this game are focused on just shooting in 4 cardinal directions that you usually shoot at. The fact that you can kind of abuse that by being at a 45-degree angle gives you a leverage against the enemies, and you can really get them in a way that you couldn't if you just had regular tears. And beside that, I think it looks dope as hell, especially with Cricket's head that we got now. The tears are just flying everywhere, and the fact there's basically no disadvantage to having the Wiz. It only gives us more tears, and by that to effect, it also increases our DPS by a lot, because not only are we shooting 3 shots, now we're shooting 6 shots. So I think it would be even crazier if we got even more items that increase how many tears we have, just because that would make it really ridiculous. Imagine if we shot like 10 out of every eye, and I was mainly going for that. Maybe we get a crazy synergy going on, but I think in itself this is already strong enough that I can say I was satisfied with my pickup. I'm really interested as to see how the Wiz actually performs if I actually pick it up on the first floor and maybe I try to play with it. I haven't done that many times, I'll be honest. I think I've done it maybe once or twice when the game actually came out, but I've never done it since, and maybe if the opportunity presents itself, I'll try it, because I think that could be an interesting experiment to see maybe where we lie. Now that I'm better at the game and I know kind of what kind of things happen, and I know the room layouts, mostly at least, I think we can do some fancy things there. With that said, we did manage to rank 49th, which is a very good score. I did not expect us to be this high, but like I said, I did have a feeling that this run was going well up until boss rush at least. I didn't get hit a lot, we had a lot of stats up, damage ups. Of course, some people found a way to break the game, and when you have 10,000 people playing, one is bound to find a way to really break the game and just be super strong and get a lot of points. But the fact we managed to rank 49th, I think, is a good testament that this was an okay run. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.